On the corner of West 39th Street and Norton, a young woman sat alone on a cold January night. Her name was Elizabeth Short. She was 26 years old, and she had just arrived in Los Angeles seeking fame and fortune. Tonight, however, the only thing she'd find was death. It began like so many other nights, with a simple gin and tonic at the Biltmore Hotel's lobby bar. A former model, Short was known for her stunning looks and dazzling smile, but something troubled her this evening. Perhaps it was the nagging feeling that came from hitchhiking across the country alone. Or maybe it was the unsettling encounter with two men who repeatedly asked her for directions. Whatever it was, she didn't want to stay out late. She called a cab, but when it arrived, the driver told her the fare would be expensive due to the late hour. He also warned her that walking alone wasn't safe. She thanked him anyway, got out, and started walking toward her cheap rooming house. It was around 10:30 p.m. The streets were dark, the wind was cold, and there was no one in sight. Somewhere, a dog barked. Suddenly, one of the streetlights flickered and went out, plunging her into darkness. Just then, a car drove by. They slowed down, and the passenger leaned out to ask if she needed a ride. Short politely declined and continued walking. But when she heard the engine start up again, she quickened her pace. That's when she noticed someone was following her. She tried to ignore it, but then she heard footsteps behind her. Turning around, she saw a man matching the description of the one who had leaned out of the car. He smiled, showing her a shiny pocket knife. It was all over in seconds. By the time the sun rose over Los Angeles, Elizabeth Short was dead. Her battered and bruised body had been dumped on an empty lot. The gruesome details would shock the nation. Her torso had been cut almost perfectly through the middle, removed and drained of blood. And to add insult to injury, her legs had been propped up on the sidewalk as though she were sitting in a B-movie version of The Little Mermaid. As word spread, so did rumors. What had seemed like an isolated crime suddenly became personal. People began pointing fingers at their friends and neighbors. Was the killer someone they knew? Soon, the tabloids latched onto the story. They sensationalized every detail, turning Short into a martyr and her murder into a spectacle. The press dubbed her the Black Dahlia, a nickname that would haunt her memory. But why? How did a beautiful young woman who was merely trying to make it in a harsh world become such a public obsession? The truth is that the public craved answers. They needed to understand how someone could do such a thing. At first, the police had no leads, but they soon received an anonymous phone call directing them to a house on West 54th Street. Inside, they found Elizabeth Short's severed torso, but the rest of her body remained missing. For weeks, the search continued with little success. Investigators followed hundreds of leads, questioned dozens of witnesses, but the mystery deepened. Then, in February, a breakthrough. Two fishermen discovered a woman's legs in a different part of town. They were wrapped in a burlap sack along the shore of the marina. The discovery brought renewed attention to the case. Police were able to confirm that the legs belonged to Elizabeth Short, but they still lacked crucial evidence. Despite the progress, questions lingered. Who had killed Short and why? The brutality of the crime suggested a killer with a violent past, but nothing concrete emerged. Theories abounded, each more lurid than the last. Some claimed that Short had been involved in underground gambling or illicit affairs. Others whispered of a jealous lover or botched robbery. But none of these theories could withstand scrutiny. As days turned into weeks, hope began to fade. Could Short's killer ever be brought to justice? The answer was unclear. After the autopsy report revealed that Short had not been sexually assaulted, the media quickly lost interest. By August, the case was cold, the files were sealed, and the killer remained at large. Then came the twist that defied all expectations. In 2006, a new theory shook the foundations of the case. It pointed the finger at a prominent psychiatrist, Dr. George Hill Hodel. The evidence against him was circumstantial, yet compelling. Several people had witnessed strange behavior in the house where Short's torso was found. They described seeing a man resembling Dr. Hodel carrying a suitcase, presumably containing the rest of Short's body. Moreover, Hodel himself had boasted about his involvement in the murder. His daughter recalled him saying, "You shouldn't have gone to that party, sweetheart. There was a black Dahlia there, and we picked her up and took her to Dr. Hodel's house to cut her up." This revelation shook everyone to their core. Could the respected psychiatrist be a remorseless killer? Was he capable of such brutality? The investigation took a dramatic turn. Forensics revisited the evidence and made a shocking discovery. A lipstick imprint found on Short's body matched a brand favored by Hodel's wife. Phone records also linked the psychiatrist to Short, suggesting a possible connection. However, as they dug deeper, they uncovered a trail of deceit. Witnesses recanted their testimonies and physical evidence vanished. The case was thrown into chaos. With no concrete proof of Hodel's guilt, authorities struggled to piece together the fragments of the past. Yet, one detail persisted. Short had been cut into sections using surgical precision. Was this the work of a madman or a skilled hand guided by malice? Was Dr. Hodel hiding behind his reputation as a healer, or were they chasing a phantom? The questions echoed through the corridors of justice, unanswered. Dr. Hodel's defense attorney, Leonard Ceratops, argued that the case was built on shaky ground. He emphasized the lack of physical evidence directly linking his client to the crime. Ceratops also highlighted inconsistencies in witness statements, suggesting that investigators were grasping at straws. Furthermore, he pointed out the absence of a motive, questioning why a prominent psychiatrist would resort to such extreme violence. The defense attorney labeled the accusations as nothing more than speculation. He emphasized that Dr. Hodel had a solid alibi for the night of the murder, corroborated by his wife's testimony. Moreover, forensic analysis of the lipstick had yielded inconclusive results. The lipstick found on the victim was of a common brand, and the same type was used by numerous women, including Dr. Hodel's wife. Ceratops argued that the prosecution's case was riddled with doubts, making it impossible to prove his client's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. He urged the jury to acquit Dr. Hodel, citing the lack of tangible evidence. According to Ceratops, his client's reputation and career were being unjustly tarnished based on flimsy, circumstantial evidence. He insisted that Dr. Hodel should be cleared of all charges and allowed to resume his life. After hearing both sides of the story, the jury deliberated for hours. They had a tough decision to make. On one hand, there were the accusations and Dr. Hodel's suspicious behavior. On the other, there was the lack of concrete evidence. Finally, they reached a verdict: not guilty. As these words echoed through the courtroom, a collective gasp swept through the audience. Dr. Hodel stood accused of one of the most heinous crimes imaginable. Yet here he was being set free, labeled a murderer by the media. While acquitted of murder, Hodel faced criticism. His reputation was in tatters. Patients stopped calling. His career faltered. Was justice served, or had a predator slipped through the net once again? The answer remained elusive. Elizabeth Short never received justice. Her killer was never brought to account. As the years passed, the case grew colder, the leads ran dry. Still, Short's story continues to fascinate. Her image haunts Hollywood's backdrops, a symbol of a city's darkest moments. The question is, what makes a killer strike so brutally? What drives them to extremes? And can justice truly be blind? In the case of the Black Dahlia, it seems that some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved, their purpose to remind us that evil can lurk in plain sight and sometimes goes unpunished. If you enjoyed this video, check out our coverage of Jack the Ripper.